Hi, I'm Dick Alexander. I am lead pastor at LifeSpring Christian Church in Cincinnati. I've been with this church now almost 26 years. Before that, I did student ministry in California for 14 years. And overall, I've been in church ministry for about 45 years. And I would just make the observation that it has been an incredibly good life. There have been times that were difficult. I've gotten my share of anonymous letters. One time in a congregational meeting in a church, I came within one vote of being fired from that church. But put in perspective, ministry has just provided tremendous friendships and relationships. You come into friendship with people who really would take a bullet for you. There is absolutely never a boring day in ministry. You get out of bed every day knowing that you have a chance to make a difference in somebody's life. If I could do things over again, there are two do-overs that I'd like to have, and since they're really important, I'll just try to talk really fast so I can squeeze these in. Neither of them is really related to church ministry. They're related to family and the impact of ministry on family. When I came to this church in Cincinnati, youth ministry, student ministry had been a really family-friendly kind of ministry. Being a senior minister, lead pastor, is not quite so much that way. And I came to a church that had been through a crisis. Before I came, there had been a student youth leader, volunteer, who had sexually molested a boy in the youth group. And then it was found out that he was simultaneously having an affair with the boy's mother, and she was simultaneously carrying on affairs with 3 men in the church. So the church was thrown into a crisis, and that was just at the time that my predecessor was moving out of town to start a new church in another city. When I arrived here, the church had been a year in the interim and had really just tried to survive through that year. I felt like I needed to hit the ground running when I came, and so I threw myself into the ministry. Also, there were a couple of elders in the church who became close friends of mine, who were very high capacity guys, and although they never pushed me to work harder, I pushed myself to try to keep up with their pace. Problem that created at home was that our kids were just coming into middle school, and I wasn't as invested in their lives as I needed to be. During our daughter's teenage years, we had a tense relationship with her. As she looked back at it years later, she said that I just wasn't there for her emotionally at some crucial times in her life. And there were a lot of times during those junior high school years when the tension got pretty high at home, and I thought, you know, we ought to go for counseling. And then things would let up a little bit and get a little bit better, and I think, we're over the hump, we're through this. And so we never sought counseling. In retrospect, I really wish that we would have. Her life melted down while she was in college. Thankfully, she moved home when that happened, and we spent a number of years sorting that out. She was not only angry at us, she was angry at God, angry at the church, wanted nothing to do with God. As we were able to sort through all of that, thankfully it came together over a 10-year period in a really wonderful way, and God gave us back the years that the locusts ate away. But as I look at it now, if I'd been an outsider looking at what was going on in our family, I could have seen it because I was in the middle of it. I couldn't see it. And my regret is that we didn't seek counseling when things were tense, because I think had we done that, we would have saved her years of pain, and along with that, saved ourselves years of frustration. The second part of it is our marriage. Betty and I laugh about it now. We've been married almost 44 years, and we say that we've had 4 wonderful years of marriage. Thankfully, they've been the 4 most recent years, but we struggled for a long time. We both grew up in rather stable Christian homes, church-going families for which we're grateful. We both graduated from a Christian college, got married after we graduated. But in spite of that, we brought a lot of junk to our marriage, a huge amount of baggage. So there were good times, but there were rough times. And I didn't pay enough attention to those rough times. And those would just smooth over and things would go okay for a while. And then she'd voice dissatisfaction again. Finally, in year 37, it all hit the wall, and we started seriously investing in our marriage. It took us about 3 years to sort through it all. We look at it now and say, wow, if we both died now, was it worth 40 years to get to the 4 that are really good? And we laugh and say, yeah, it was. But I realize now, looking back at it, that I should have seen the signs. I should have seen the indicators. And had I not been so distracted by my ministry in the church, I would have paid more attention to my family. And I believed in my head that family was the priority. I had it in my head that my wife just had one husband, and my daughter had just one dad, and there were thousands of pastors who could lead churches, but I was the one they needed. But I didn't live that carefully enough. I allowed myself to be too invested in the church and not enough on balance in family. And if I had it to do over again, that's what I'd change. There have been mistakes in the church, but those weren't the hard part. The family have been the real challenge. And that's part of ministry that I'd like to have over again. And I would just encourage you to really live the commitment to family.